the talk and really how entrepreneurs and business people and anyone that wants to participate today can actually get involved in some of the solutions to reinvent money from the bottom up. So to give you a bit of background, in 2006 I worked for an investment bank called KBC Peel Hunt. And I was a couple of years as a trader, and then I was working on IPOs and making small cap companies in the UK and making them public. And in 2006 I decided that I didn't want to be a part of that anymore, and I started working on alternative finance, sustainable finance. And in this time, this was pre-financial crisis, pre-Bitcoin, pre-crowdfunding, pre any of the innovation that we are actually seeing today. The first draft of the book that I wrote around about then was a book called Bank to the Future. It's now in its third draft. And the book Bank to the Future, the original version, focused on the top-down reforms that need to happen. We discussed many of them today. There was 3 recommendations and 3 solutions, and it was made to address 3 major problems at the time, which have now actually been addressed through entrepreneurs, activists, and are actually in their traction stage right now. The 3 solutions, or the 3 problems that we talked about in banking, which are addressed at conferences like this, but never anywhere else, are that when you deposit your money at the bank becomes the legal owner of your money. It is a legal contract whereby you give your money to a bank, and they can decide to repossess your money, take your money, spend your money, do with it as they wish, which is what the threat was in the panel that we just saw with the Greek people. It was threatening that the banks will repossess the money that they own, that is actually held in a ledger that you've lent to the bank, and they can take that at any point that they want, and that's what happened in Cyprus. And the second is that when they own your money, which they do when you deposit it at a bank, they can spend it as they wish. And if you take an economy like the UK, one that I know very well, 40% of the money is used in the property market, the other 40% is used in financial speculation, and about 13% of it makes its way into small to medium-sized enterprise that create jobs that add value to the economy. It's simply because it's not the bank's jobs to actually redistribute money in a socially or economically viable way. That's not their job. But the government have outsourced, which is the third problem, the ability to create money to the private banking sector. And that's through digital money. When we talk about cryptocurrencies did not invent digital money. Digital money was created by banks, and they created it every time they issue a loan, and that's brand new money that's created in a ledger, which is then transported over to any other ledger in the banking system. So that invention was already there. Crypto did something very different. So the reason I got into Bitcoin when that came along, I spoke at one of the first conferences in Prague. I don't know if anyone was there in Prague when that happened. Is because it simultaneously addressed those 3 problems. Firstly, it gave you a way of owning your own money. So all my Bitcoins, not all of them, but some of them are stored on here, some of them are stored on there, some of them are stored at a bank in a cold storage wallet, some are stored in various different places all around the world. But I own those Bitcoins 100%. That is my money. There's no legal entitlement to that money, if you want to call it money. And I also spend it as I wish. So wherever I go in the world, I use my Bitcoin debit card, and I can convert it into euros at point of sale, or I can convert it into Hong Kong dollars at point of sale, and I can spend it anywhere. I'd much rather everyone accept Bitcoins direct, so that I don't need to intersect with the traditional fiat system and charge and pay the fees. But I can use my Bitcoins anywhere that I wish. And that was the second thing that came along. The third thing that came along is it solved and created a new form of who profits from the process of money creation. So we had a panel earlier where we were discussing, at the moment, banks create 97% of every penny when they issue a loan, and money's backed by debt, and therefore digital money is created and banks get the profits from the money creation process. About 3% is government-created money, which is They print off some kind of coin and note, depending on where you are in the world. They print it off. Let's take a £10 note. It costs them 3p to print and make, and there's £9.97 profit when you sell it to a bank and put it in their ATM. They then give you digital money in exchange for that, and that money is added to tax revenue and reduces the amount of tax you're meant to pay in theory, or reduces government debt. So governments profit from paper money, banks create profit from digital money, and then two more forms of money were invented around the financial crisis. The first was quantitative easing, which is leveraging central banks' balance sheets in order to purchase securities that the bank gets a commission on from selling, and the government benefit from the borrowing, or it goes into a large company. And what tends to happen is the large companies use their stock, use the quantitative easing money in order to push up the stock prices, push up bond prices, and we get a simultaneous property bubble because the money is being redistributed through the bank, and then quantitative easing, which redistributes to corporates, large companies, and governments. And that didn't make its way into people. But crypto came along and invented the fourth way of creating money, which is the people securing the network get rewarded with newly created coins every 10 minutes. And it was the first form of monetary policy where the users actually benefit from the process of creating money. So the profits of creating money have to be given to someone. It's a question of the debate really about reinventing money is who's going to benefit from those. This reform that we had on there was about taking it away from private banks and giving it to governments. I think that's just one institution that's going to misuse money to another institution that's going to misuse money. And we've already seen what happens. We've had those case studies already. What we're seeing right now for the first time is a global currency where anyone can create it and anyone can profit from it, the process of creating money, the redistribution that actually has, and it's a very interesting socio-economic experiment. So that's why I got interested in Bitcoin. Now what I'm going to go through today is I hold a personal belief that one of the reasons, the difference between, I believe a lot of people blame capitalism for what they really mean as corporatism. And the difference between capitalism and corporatism is simply access to finance. So the difference between a large corporate and a small to medium-sized enterprise is that they successfully work through some of these, the cycle that I'm about to go through. So what I'd like to do to highlight the point of what's changing is I'd like to show you what the process used to be of someone turning to a small to medium-sized enterprise into a corporate. Then I'd like to show you the difference between how it's being done today, and then I'd like to show you how I forecast it will be done tomorrow, and then we'll go over to the final speaker, Max, and some of the things we're doing together. And I'd like to actually talk about real-life examples that are happening right now that you can all participate in and be involved in, and some of the stuff that we're doing. So yesterday, this is what the difference was essentially between a small to medium-sized enterprise that's employing a few people, adding value to the economy and increasing productive output, versus a corporate that might be in the stage where they're leeching money out from quantitative easing, using it to prop up financial markets and use financial engineering as a way of redistributing wealth, which is what we have. And it's the financial markets that sit in between that process. They've actually invented a lot of really useful stuff, which is going to be very useful when you have transparency and blockchains in the middle of it, but has been abused and misused because there's no transparency and no blockchain in the middle. So here's what it used to look like yesterday anyway. You had a business idea, you go out to your friends, your family, it was called the Triple F round, friends, family and founders, or if you speak to someone else, friends, family and fools. And they give you some money to get your business started. That's how we all start. We get a job, we save up, or we stick it on the credit card, we get some access to credit, you pretend to the bank that you're not going to set up a business with it, because they'd much rather you paint your house, or buy a car, or something that has no value to society, then they'll issue a loan. But if you want to set up a business, it's too risky and it adds too much value to society. So you won't get a business loan, because they just don't exist anymore. They're a PR tactic from banks to get people engaged into thinking that they can. So that's what you used to have. The friends, fools and family round is where you used to start. And then what you used to have to do is you used to have to go out and persuade a bank to match some of your money, And they used to be in the business of lending to businesses. That's where banking started. Seems like a crazy concept right now, because any business that's gone to a bank and asked for a business loan because they're going to employ some staff and add some value will shortly be shown the door. Yeah? So you used to be able to get these institutions that used to lend to businesses called banks. And then what you had to do is you had to go out and find someone very wealthy and rich to invest some money and sell some stock. So rather than going through debt, you went through equity, you sold some shares in your company, and there was only very, very wealthy people that could afford to be in this asset class. The reason being is because lending to business or investing in business is a typically high-risk, high-return proposition. So therefore, when banks are being asked to do that, they're being asked to take low risk with people's money. So they immediately put it all towards property, which is why it's all reallocated through mortgages rather than through businesses. But the rich people essentially, you're looking for, the typical angel investment used to be about £100,000. A typical portfolio of someone wealthy would have about 10 investments, because some of them will go bust, the others would go on to become the next Google, perhaps, is what they're hoping. And so you needed about £1 million to start a portfolio, and this would be the risky part of your portfolio. So this would be the 5-10% of what's risky. So you needed a 10 to 20 million pound wealth portfolio before you started, and most people are looking to put that in gold or property or other asset classes. So it was always bottom of the line investing in a business. So that's why the TV programs came out about these really wealthy people, where everyone's trying to pitch them and get some money. Once you went through that stage, you might have got access to some institutional money, which essentially meant that you managed to persuade a venture capitalist to take your pension money, pooling together from all other pensioners, and put a portion of it into investing in a business. And the venture capitalists essentially look at investing in things which are just about to look like Facebook, but they don't get involved in the earlier stage. That was to the rich people. But if you got to this institutional stage, you started to reach the promised land of becoming a corporate business. Because after you had the venture capitalist, you could then access millions through the private equity markets, where people would essentially be taking your money, taking a portion of it, and investing it in companies that are further along the cycle and maybe lending them some money. And then you got access to the financial markets, like the London Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ and the stock markets, and you can IPO your company, which means you can get access to billions. And then if you're a big corporate, you could then get access to tens of billions, which you could use to entice that through the bond markets, what they call those markets, and the quantitative easing markets, i.e. the easy 0% interest money. You go through that cycle, and this is the difference. The left is the sandwich shop, the right is McDonald's. So it became, this access to finance became the major differentiator between the small to medium-sized enterprise versus the corporate. The corporate managed to successfully get through that cycle to be an institution that could get access to all the world's pension funds, insurance money, and all the money that's pulled together through the debt capital markets and the IPO markets. That was the difference, okay? And that is how it used to look. So then what happened is the financial crisis came along. A lot of these markets imploded. A lot of them needed outside government support in order to prop them up. So we had schemes like quantitative easing to prop up the bond market. We had schemes like Help to Buy, where governments would try and find more people to get in debt because they couldn't afford their mortgage. So it allowed them to refinance and try and get on the ladder, even though their wages were going down and the house prices were going up. And they figured the solution to the economy is to get those house prices up more, even though wages is going down. But that's the economy they know, because money is debt, and therefore if you're going to stimulate the economy, you need to do that. But then entrepreneurs came along and started actually disintermediating and creating more access to finance and more access to capital. So then we started to see more innovation and more changes in this sector. So the way it looks today is essentially you have your friends, fools and family round, but the difference is that now with the internet, the cost to starting your business significantly reduced. Your factory is Skype, depending on which services you use, your storage is all these different services that we have access to now. And the people who were starting businesses with less than £1,000 using an internet connection, a laptop and a smartphone. And that became their startup cost. So that was why we've had, we're moving from millions of businesses to a few 100,000 that we had a few years ago. But then what would happen is this new invention came along called crowdfunding. And crowdfunding was originally created in the movie industry, and the movie industry had a chicken and egg scenario. They said, we could create this movie, however, we haven't got access to the finance, and unless we get access to the finance, we can't commit the good actors, and unless we commit the good actors, we can't get access to the finance. And so the movie industry came along and said, well, how can we disrupt, as it were, that chicken and egg scenario? So they said, well, we could create trailers, and we could put them online, and people could contribute money to those, and then we could use that money to engage an actor and then get access to greater financial markets to complete the film. And so the movie industry created this concept called crowdfunding in America, and you had the likes of Kickstarter and Indiegogo, which became a phenomenon and raised billions and billions for people. Business started to get hold of that concept and said, hold on, I could, rather than actually creating the product, I can then forward sell the product. I could say, so the classic example is Pebbles Watch. Pebbles Watch came along and said, well, we're really good at creating a watch, and this was before you had Apple Watch or any of those, and it was a watch that speaks to your iPhone and before the big manufacturers got involved. And they said, look, we want to sell this watch for $150. We need $100,000 to create it. If you buy one now, we'll give it to you at a discount, and we'll send you a watch in 9 months' time. After selling 68,500 of these, they had to switch it off because they did not know how to deliver $10 million worth of watches. Okay, and this crowdfunding phenomenon then went from there. So that kind of changed the way that people were starting on the earlier stage. So one, the cost went down, so more people started coming on business. And then a new form of finance came along from the film industry, which is pre-sell your product, sell it online, and see if you can pool enough money together to engineer the product and get started. Then in the UK, we set about this about 4 years ago. I spent the last 3 years of my life spending 80% of my time with regulators, governments, and all sorts of officials, which was a massive suck on resource. But at the time, it was illegal to sell shares online and do an offering without going through a stock market and paying an investment banker like me at the time, £250,000 up front, £250,000 retainer, and 5% of everything you raise and the future profits, which is how we used to do it. So that was originally started as a way of trying to get access to more finance for smaller businesses, but unfortunately regulations took that away. And so we tried to do it in the UK with online investing, spent 3 years trying to make that happen. Eventually just ended up leaving the UK and created a website that we launched earlier this year for the second time called banktothefuture.com. And it was a simple concept. The simple concept was this: allow people to invest online in a compliant way. We have to comply. I would prefer more people to be able to invest online, but our regulators all around the world have a different opinion about who should be able to invest. Many countries are perfectly okay for you to gamble and put 100 quid on the horses, but they're not okay for you to buy some assets and invest in a company with that same £100. And so, that's kind of the argument that went through. But anyway, this concept of equity crowdfunding came along. It took the crowdfunding concept and said, well, let's pull together angels. Let's allow people to be online angels, invest smaller sums. We can pull it all together, and that could open up some the ability for people to invest in companies, so you don't have to be at that high stage. And also it can give a new source of finance for the businesses. To give you an example, this is one of the companies. We're banktothefuture.com. We're essentially an online investment platform, and we specialise just in fintech and financial innovation. The only types of companies that we accept, we've got two kind of criteria. First is you've got to be in financial innovation, and secondly, you're not in the area of fintech that allows banks to do stuff cheaper or commit crime cheaper. You're in the area of fintech where you're actually looking at doing something that makes it less significant. And so Big Reserve, 48 hours, couple of $1 million from all people, 121 odd people that were all interested in making currency transactions completely free globally using the Bitcoin protocol. And then you have the lending service. So rather than going to a bank now, you have the invention of the peer-to-peer lending service. Essentially, people are getting really, really bad interest rates, so now they can go to an online platform. They can have all of their money diversified across lots of different loans. The platform can take the loan, you take the default risk rather than the bank, and therefore, consequently, you can get 5 to 15% interest rather than the interest at the bank that factors in all their bonus. And so that started to bring in. Here's another company, Crowd Property. They decided that they wanted to crowd people back in to be able to buy properties. So now Crowd Property allows you to invest in properties starting with as little as £500, raise the seed through Bank to the Future, and they're a long way. Now people are buying and getting mortgages and getting properties through online platforms rather than going to banks, and people are investing in those. And then you have the traditional financial markets, which hasn't been disrupted yet. So still all the startups are looking at getting the venture capital, getting onto the IPO in order to exit, and then doing some bond offerings and turning into a corporate, essentially. So that's kind of where it's looking today. What we've been working on is initiatives and funding things which can disrupt that model as much as possible. And we've been very successful at it. We've had about this is a little fund that the next speaker, Max, and myself set up. This is called Bitcoin Capital. And essentially what we try to do is say, well, we now have real-time money now that Bitcoin can be transported anywhere globally with virtually zero cost. So why do people actually wait for dividends every month or every year when they could receive them in real time? So we pay all our investors real-time dividends every single day, based upon what we invest in that. So really, the concept of programmable money can be used in so many different ways. Now that it's programmable, that we can set up a venture capital fund that pays investors dividends every single day, and we raise. That's now a couple of million. We raised a couple and a half million. All the venture capital fund was raised through online platforms. So now, all in all, we've had, just this year alone, 28 million invested through the platform in people that are building different financial innovation and different areas. So it's becoming like a really interesting force, changing these bottom up. I'm not going to go through Bitcoin because we've done that, and this will just be my final few slides because I think I'm out of time. But many of you may have heard that the concept of Bitcoin is just simply the first application of a technology. And the technology is several things that have come together that create a transparent way of moving value from A to B almost completely free, with very little friction. In a neutral network whereby it doesn't care what your sexuality is, your race are, what you're doing with the money, it just moves money A to B neutral. And the first application of that was currency. But now what we're seeing is a lot of the blockchain being involved in disrupting some of these different areas. So some of the things we've been involved in ushering this transition to a world where people use crypto very frequently is we've been looking at hybrid crowdfunding. So Max, for example, he launched a website called Start Join. Start Join is you can take your concept, your idea, you can stick it up on the platform, and it comes with its own currency. So it's taken the Bitcoin concept. There's a coin called Start Coin, and it's got one user case, which is providing liquidity. It's like quantitative easing for small to medium-sized enterprise. The proceeds are redistributed amongst the community, and projects are getting funded every day. They raise finance on Bank to the Future in the equity side, and now the community are all their investors. We did this model with Bitcoin Capital, came up with an idea, stuck it on a rewards-based crowdfunding platform, raised the money to build a website, do this concept, and then later move it to equity and go through that cycle. There's a Dutch business that you may, that's live at the moment, StartChat, raised money through rewards-based crowdfunding, got the concept together, created the beta version. Matt over here just launched on Bank to the Future, raised, where are we? 80, almost 90% of that target in a 48-hour period. So things are really changing. When I hear about all these concepts of full reserve banks, I'll finish off now, what I want people to understand and appreciate is that there's now access to capital. There's now access to finance to do financial innovation. And that's one of the things that I think is really, really important in ushering through to this news. So I'm out of slides. I had lots more case studies and things to go through, but I'd rather stick on time.
One question from the audience because it's so interesting. Maybe one golden question for Simon before we go to our final speaker.
Which auditor are you using?
Which auditor are you using? For which company?
Particularly the one for which you pay out dividends every day.
We use the blockchain as an auditor. So we provide addresses for everyone so that they can see the transactions in. And then everything we have to do in fiat, we've got an auditor that we're currently using. It's a strange question. Are you one of the investors?
No.
Yeah.
I just want to know whether there is also an external auditor which audits your accounts and basically are you publishing quarterlies or annual?
Yeah, so it brings up an interesting point. Yes, as a normal fund that's registered with a regulator, we need to perform the normal functions.
Which regulator?
This is the Cayman Islands one, so we're registered with the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority.
And is there a prospectus and an annual?
Sorry?
Is there already a prospectus?
Is it the prospectus? All the contracts and everything are all online.